And, you know, a lot of the screening and other stuff that we do, frankly, is just bureaucracy. It's a waste of time. Let's let people in by and large.
Mark Carney got called out on live television for copying all of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party's ideas. Also, if you want more mass, unvetted immigration, an even weaker dollar, a worse economy, and to, I guess, basically become a third world country, be sure to vote for the Liberal Party. And it's not even like I'm being crazy because they actually said it themselves. Yeah, you're going to be shocked by that one. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe, follow, like, comment your thoughts down below. Danielle Smith went absolutely off when she was on stage talking about Mark Carney following her meeting with Mark Carney too, which makes it even funnier. We also have an incredible breakdown of Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre, and the Trump tariff situation coming for you. I don't know if there is a bigger show of how disillusioned, misinformed, propagandized, manipulated the majority of the Canadian public is than this. So this was posted up on CTV News. It is a Nanos poll, and it says the top issues that matter to Canadians. Now, before I dive into all of this, I really do believe that this is the most vitally important thing for you to keep in the back of your mind. We are going into an election. It's supposed to be called tomorrow, and we are expected, according to sources, to be at the polls on April 28th, okay? That's very soon. We do not have a whole lot of time here, and as we will discuss and develop throughout this episode, we are so screwed if the Conservatives do not win an overwhelming majority.
There is only one real choice for Canada for our next Prime Minister. There is only one leader who will dismantle the nation-killing policies of the Liberals and NDP, and that, my friends, is Federal Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre. I have faith that Pierre will unleash Canada's energy sector like we have never seen before. He will free Alberta from being landlocked by the federal laws and policies we've had to endure. He will bring back law and order to our cities and fix the Liberals' open border immigration system. He will fix the bloated budget. He will rebuild our distinguished military and end the leftist lunacy that we have had to suffer under for 10 long years.
So reading this poll made me so mad, like irrationally mad. And I need you to focus on exactly what this is, what we're about to get into, so that you can properly plead your case, you can properly articulate yourself, and we can hopefully get some actual change in this country. So according to Nanos, the top 5 issues that Canadians these are going to be the deciding issues in terms of where they're placing their vote. Number 1, we have Trump and U.S. relations. And then it goes on, list of 5 here. It says jobs, economy, healthcare, inflation, housing, cost of housing. Now, the reason why this made me so mad, and I'm not even surprised. Of course, I'm not surprised about any of this. I mean, Mark Nixon put it perfectly on X. He said, Liberals are projected to win a majority. Why? Prorogue Parliament, launch a 2-month Liberal ad campaign, silence the opposition, buy off media, use Trump for fear. Boom, scam complete. But here's the part that just gets my blood boiling. It is the fact that Canadians are so dense that they do not realize if all of those other issues were non-existent. And by the way, those issues are existent as a result of liberal policy, spending, and regulation. That's why they exist, because we didn't have those problems like we do now 10 years ago. The Trump issue would not matter nearly as much. So the fact that Donald Trump is the number 1 thing as the ballot question this year is absolutely deranged. There is no other word for it. Because you know what? If our jobs and economy was fine, if our inflation was fine, because we had a government that understood the economy, which, by the way, Mark Carney doesn't. We'll get into that big time. If the housing and cost of housing wasn't so bad, if we hadn't been flooded by mass immigration to temporarily spike the numbers in our debt to GDP ratios prior to Justin Trudeau stepping down, if all of that stuff hadn't happened and our healthcare was better because people had better working conditions, they were paid much more fairly, and we didn't have doctors and nurses fleeing to predominantly the United States to achieve such measures, which we could have here at home, but we don't, because we choose to fund in all sorts of various social programs instead of for the things that really matter, we would be able to actually confidently say to Donald Trump, screw you, like, we don't care, we're fine, this is stupid, you're being stupid. The reason why that issue is so intense for us right now is because of reasons 2 through 5 on this issues that matter to Canadians list. That's the only reason why Donald Trump's tariff threat is as crippling as it is.
Just a little while ago, before I got involved and totally changed the election, which I don't care about, probably it's to our advantage, actually.
And people are so deluded that they actually think that Mark Carney is going to be way better for Canada and the economy than Pierre Poilievre, even though Mark Carney has literally not imposed a single idea of his own yet. Everything he has proposed has been Pierre Poilievre's plan far beyond. And also, some of them have been plans that the Liberals voted down. And now suddenly they want to apply them because I guess now they're conservative, right?
Merci de répondre à nos questions.
This was a question asked in French, but the reporter asked Mark Carney, basically said, you know, in 1 week, you promised that you were going to cancel capital gains. You said that you were going to start pipeline projects. And then you also promised to cancel GST on the purchase of a first home. So my question is simple. Why didn't you run for the Conservative Party?
La question est simple. Pourquoi vous n'êtes pas présenté pour le Parti conservateur?
Il y a plusieurs raisons pour lesquelles.
And of course, Mark Carney laughs it off.
And now we're going to see ourselves launched into the shortest campaign window possible. And I think that is done very much intentionally. A shorter campaign allows for less mistakes, right? It is a way to try and contain someone who has never done this before, the Prime Minister has never done this before, and make sure that they eliminate risk.
It is so wild to me to see legacy media outlets such as the CBC and CTV as well, who have been defending Mark Carney and posing it as though his inexperience is a good thing. Oh, he's an outsider? Really?
A couple, 3 things in Carney. He's positioning himself as an outsider when he's been an advisor to Trudeau since 2020, and he's chairman of his economic task force. Right. But most importantly, he's been...
So he's not an outsider.
Well, most importantly, he's been a charter member of the orthodoxy of Ottawa for decades.
Yeah.
So all this thinking structure, and he's been as governor of Central Bank. He's been, prior to that, he was in Finance Canada. He's been advised. So he's got to own the Ottawa thinking.
Right, and not as a follower, but as an architect.
An architect.
Right.
So.
And here's some wild facts about his actual experience and knowledge in the economy.
And for somebody who's been fundamentally a career civil servant, and to make these broad articulations, who has never gone out and got a purchase order and traded Canadian goods globally, that actually means that he doesn't understand the nature of how capital goes.
Which couldn't be more clear than listening to Mark Carney try to talk about how his ideas that are economy killers that only enrich him and his company and his friends and all of their investments are good ideas. He tries really hard to convince you of this.
CBC News, you appeared to suggest yesterday that you're open to moving away from the federal government's emissions cap, while your environment minister said that the cap will remain in place. Can you explain what your approach will be to the emissions cap, and specifically how it will be determined and what will inform your decision?
Well, there's 2 things, or there's several things here. First, I'm a pragmatist, so I'm focused on, as the government is, on getting emissions down from the production and transportation of conventional oil and gas. Okay, that's good for the environment. It ultimately will be good for the competitiveness of those producers and the distribution of that. So that's the objective, is to get down. Now, there is a role for an emissions cap. And again, emissions cap, not a production cap, but an emissions cap. I know you didn't say it, but just to be clear, because some twist it. There is a role for an emissions cap within that. But what's required in order to get those emissions down the emissions intensity down of the production that we can see growing, particularly if Canadian oil and gas is displacing American oil and gas that we're importing right now in eastern Canada. What's required is investment. Investment in carbon capture and storage technology, investment in reducing methane, fugitive methane, methane flare, other aspects, et cetera. What's required is investment. And what happened in, I can't remember where the room is, whether it was there or over there, somewhere around here where the room was, is, and what I was referring to earlier, what the federal government is doing, is putting in place the framework so that that investment is going to happen more quickly. So my focus, and where I took my response the other day, is around how are we going to make that investment happen, is action in order to reduce those emissions. That requires partnerships. It requires a different framework, the types of things we were talking about in the room. Sorry, it's a big word, but it means that you've got to be able to get a project approved quickly.
Bro, the last thing I want is somebody to lead our country who considers framework a big and confusing word in a room full of adults, reporters, journalists, insiders, and other people in the political realm. Yikes. You know, all of this that he says is made exponentially more delusional when you recognize the fact that in total, Canada as a country is responsible for 1.5 to 2% of global emissions. Nothing. Canadian oil and gas are responsible for 0.5 to 0.6 of global emissions. And he wants to put on a production cap.
The new Prime Minister needs to listen up and hear what I have to say. Alberta really does want to be part of Team Canada as we navigate these tariff issues with the United States and beyond. But we need Team Canada to be on Team Alberta. And this is what that means. Scrap the oil and gas production cap today. Get rid of Bill C-69, the No New Pipelines Act, today. Scrap the insane electric vehicle mandates and federal electricity regulations right now, and approve oil and gas pipelines and transportation corridors through BC, the north, and to the East Coast, and guarantee that neither the federal government nor any other province will block Alberta from the ports and pipe that we need to get our resources to market.
He wants to tax and penalize Canadian producers on the one thing that quite literally fuels our economy.
Now, the public investments have always turned $1 into 10 cents, but that's taxpayer money. But if a businessman does that, they're quickly bankrupt and out of the business. So his articulation and framing of we just have to spend more money longer, which is Einstein's definition of insanity. He's a macroeconomist and a central banker. And that's a very narrow function. Your responsibility is price stability of the money systems, banking stability and the regulatory compliance of the payment systems. You operate in a narrow but important realm. But your involvement with the firm and the productivity that's a very distant part. It seems similar.
Right, so his expertise doesn't transfer.
The metaphor I can say is it's like he's a leading dermatologist.
Yeah.
He's a doctor.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I'm a doctor. I'm going to do neurosurgery because that's a doctor. And the brain is very close to the face, which has got skin. Mm-hmm. So I can do this. And in fact, these are very, very different realms that have very different levels of expertise. But there seems to be a comfort and a cavalierness way into realms that Canada's performed poorly. He has been part of a scene that's an architect of a scene that's performed poorly. And he has no expertise in this realm and no experience. He didn't need to have it as a central banker, but he's availing as if he does.
Yeah, well, that was one of my impressions in reading the book,
and it makes me nervous because his thinking to me is just a more efficient Trudeau. Given what's happened to Canada.
Yeah. Faster and faster.
And we're last place already. What's below last place?
Yeah, well, Canadians, I can understand the conundrum because Carney has international imprimatur because he was governor of the Bank of England, and it's very easy, and I can understand it. for people to think, well, he's been successful in 2 complex jobs, and one of them was outside of Canada.
It's the same job. It's the same job.
Yeah, fair enough. But it's easy for people to presume that that makes him a master of financial strategy in all dimensions when they don't know.
No, they don't know. And that is very, very intentional. And perhaps that's why there's more and more people calling for platforms like X to be banned. In fact, British Columbia, a city councillor, has called now on Mark Carney to ban the free speech social media platform X and declare supporters of U.S. President Donald Trump as an extremist organization. Why is it that they are so scared of people having access to information and being able to freely exchange thoughts and ideas, all the while regurgitating talking points, not being honest, and hiding your true intentions, like this from none other than Mark Carney's advisor?
Let the private sector move to bring people in and facilitate them being able to do that. And a lot of the screening and other stuff that we do, frankly, is just bureaucracy. It's a waste of time. Let's let people in by and large, and if we have to do the screening ex post, that's fine. I can tell you, bad guys and bad women probably find their way into this country through means other than applying through permanent residency. Like, let's just face that, right? So it's crazy. Guess what? A Canadian firm wants to hire somebody from outside the country. They've identified them, they interviewed them, they want to pay them, and that individual is going to be taxed in Canada. Approved. What's that? What's that mortgage ad? Approved, right? Like we should get those guys to be running our immigration system.
Within 4 years, I'm willing to bet that if Mark Carney wins this federal election, Canada will be no more. Nothing about it will be recognizable anymore.
Will you commit to stopping this crazy social experiment that hurts everybody involved, including the immigrants, lowering the price of homes, putting us first?
The answer is yes. Absolutely. I will stop the insanity. I'm against the Century Initiative. I voted against the Century Initiative in the House of Commons when it came up. It's a radical, crazy idea that's meant for multinational corporate elites to bring in people from poor countries in large numbers to take away Canadian jobs, drive wages down, and profits up. In the last 10 years of the Liberals, it's gotten totally out of control. If they're growing the population by 1.2 million people a year, we're only building 200,000 homes. So our population is growing 3 times faster than our housing stock. No wonder we can't get people can't actually get a place to live. So I'm going to slow immigration down, and I have a very simple mathematical formula. The numbers we let in this year will have to be lower than the number of homes we built in the previous year.
I don't know if there's even words to express the feeling I have inside, how absolutely disgusted, disappointed, and appalled I feel knowing that mainstream legacy media does not talk about this stuff. Because if they did, and it's not like this is wacky conspiracy stuff, this is the truth. It is well-documented truth, but they don't talk about it. And if they did, we would not be in the situation that we are right now. We just simply wouldn't.
But my sense of Trudeau, and I think this is valid, is that he is nothing but a follower of those ideas. But that's not the case with Carney. Carney is a major architect and initiator of such ideas. And then
Well, could be, but whether that's a good idea or bad, he's using Ottawa's failed economic logic of the 70s to affect the norm of a green transition or anything else.
Yes.
Whether a
so
green
even
transition,
if he's right, it's not going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not making a normative case whether this is a good or bad
that's
idea.
Me making the normative claims.
It's going to fail. And it's going to fail in obvious economics.
Now, I don't want you to feel unbelievably hopeless by the fact that every single thing is rooting in Mark Carney's favor right now. There's a reason why it's rooting in his favor. That is how evil works. That is clear as day to see. It has been so obvious with the mass psychosis, the anti-Trump rhetoric, how much this has just been so manipulated by the press and by influencers online who are liberals, who clearly don't ever read past the first page of Google. So don't feel hopeless, because there is a lot of work that we can do in a short period of time, but it's up to you to take that into your hands and to say, no, I'm not okay with my country going in this direction anymore. We're done. We've had enough with this. We need to get rid of this leftist ideology. We're done with this. So use your voice, use it loudly. Don't be afraid of the criticism. I promise you, there is a lot of support here on the other side. And if you find yourself failing with nobody there to hold your hand, just, come and give me a shout. I don't really like holding hands, but I'll do it for you. Okay? I promise I will. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. We have a little bit more of Jordan Peterson to get through that I'll just close out with because it is hopeful. But I just wanted to remind you to subscribe, follow, like the video, comment your thoughts down below as well. And just remember, everything is against us, but just because everything is against us doesn't mean that it's going to fail.
That could have been followed by a conclusion that we're so far behind that it's hopeless. But that isn't the conclusion that you've drawn. The conclusion that you've drawn is that Canada is, in fact, intrinsically a wealthy country with regard to the first leg, resource, manufacturing, finance, the traditional Canadian economy, but also with regard to the second, is that we do have the expertise here, technically. We, in principle, have even the expertise with regards to legislation and governance and negotiation, but that because we've had a narrow focus on something like 1970s pre-Reformation, Friedman, free market rhetoric, we haven't taken advantage of any of that. Quite the contrary. But we could.